The confession sits in your throat like a coin you can't swallow. You taste metal. You're in a kitchen that doesn't feel like yours anymore. Light too bright, silence too clean, and you're holding a sentence that would set you free. That's what the slogans say. Say the truth. Speak your truth. Radical honesty. But your body doesn't want freedom. Your body wants to survive the next 10 minutes without detonating your life like a cheap firework. So you do the thing that makes modern people feel guilty. You edit, you soften, you choose a smaller truth. You let the big truth rot gently in the corner like fruit you're saving for later. And here's the uncomfortable part. That might be the healthiest thing you do all week. Because honesty isn't free. It costs nervous system currency. It costs social oxygen. It costs identity glue. And sometimes it costs more than you actually have in your account. We treat truth like a vitamin, as if more is always better. But psychologically, truth can act like a solvent. It dissolves the stories that hold you together. It strips the protective paint off reality until the raw concrete shows. Some people worship that feeling. Others call it spiraling. So when someone sells radical honesty like it's a moral upgrade, it's worth asking what they're really selling. Clarity, or the thrill of burning down complicated lives with a single match. Because truth isn't just a statement, it's a force, and forces have consequences. There's a theory that makes people very uneasy because it doesn't flatter the healthy mind. It suggests that mental well-being might not be about seeing reality clearly. It might be about seeing reality with a strategic blur. It's called depressive realism. The idea, in plain language, some people who are depressed may judge certain situations more accurately than healthy people do. Not in every way, not about everything, but in specific, measurable pockets of perception. Control, outcomes, feedback, odds. Meanwhile, non-depressed people often carry positive illusions, optimistic distortions about themselves, their future, their agency. And if you're hearing that and thinking, so sadness equals truth, slow down. It's not a crown. It's not a superpower. It's not a personality type you should cosplay. It's a clue. A clue that the mind might not be designed to be a perfect camera. It might be designed to be a PR department. Because if your brain's only job was accuracy, you'd be a walking spreadsheet. You'd be calm, correct, and completely incapable of getting out of bed on a cold morning to pursue anything uncertain. But humans don't run on accuracy. Humans run on meaning. And meaning is often a beautiful lie with good lighting. You're scrolling a dating app at night, thumb moving like it's trying to erase itself. You see faces that look like curated advertisements for a life you don't have. People smiling in places you've never been, holding drinks you've never ordered, wearing confidence like it's their natural skin. You tell yourself, I'm fine, I'm just browsing. But your chest tightens anyway. Then you match with someone, and your brain instantly writes a small fantasy. Maybe this one will be different. Maybe this one will see you. Maybe this one will prove you're still chosen by the world. That fantasy isn't truth. It's a sedative your mind manufactures in real time. And it's not dumb, it's not weakness, it's strategy. Because if you looked at the situation with pure realism, you might conclude, odds are low. The app is engineered to keep you swiping, attention is the currency, and the emotional cost is real. Accurate, also paralyzing. Positive illusions, those little optimistic distortions, aren't just comforting. They're mobilizing. They're the engine oil that keeps your will from grinding itself into powder. Healthy people often believe they're a bit more competent than they are, a bit more in control than they are, a bit more likely to succeed than the numbers justify. And that error can be adaptive. It's the difference between applying for the job and never applying because you ran the probability simulation in your head and it came back cold. It's the difference between falling in love and never letting anyone close because you can already see the ending. It's the difference between building something and refusing to begin because you can't guarantee it will work. Truth can be accurate and still be useless. In biology, useful beats true more often than we like to admit. Evolution doesn't reward correctness, it rewards continuation. That's where the evolution of deception comes in. And it gets darker when you realize deception isn't just something humans do with words. It's baked into life. Camouflage is a lie painted onto skin. A peacock tail is a theatrical performance designed to hijack attention. Even your own immune system lies in a way. It overreacts, misidentifies, panics, because an occasional false alarm is cheaper than missing a real threat. Nature isn't a courtroom, it's a casino, and deception is one of its oldest strategies. So when people say always be honest, they're accidentally arguing against millions of years of survival engineering. Because the most primitive lie is not what you say to others, it's what you tell yourself. Your mind edits reality constantly. It deletes information that would overwhelm you. It highlights details that support your goals. It builds a narrative where you are the main character, not a random animal with a mortgage and a fragile body. This isn't moral failure, it's architecture. And the architecture has a biological purpose to keep you moving. Here's another micro scene. You're at work, sitting in a glass meeting room that smells like coffee and quiet panic. Someone higher up is talking about exciting changes, and everybody nods like dashboard ornaments. You can feel the truth in your bones. Layoffs might be coming, or your role might be shrinking, or this opportunity is just a nicer word for more work. But you smile, you take notes, you say, "Sounds great." Is that cowardice? Or is that an organism maintaining social safety inside a hierarchy? Radical honesty in that room doesn't make you virtuous. It makes you target-shaped. People forget that honesty is not only about facts. Honesty is also about timing, context, power, and consequence. Truth without strategy is just emotional dumping dressed up as purity. Now let's pull back to depressive realism. The unsettling suggestion is that when the mind's optimistic filters weaken, reality can feel more real. The highs flatten, the future narrows, the self becomes less inflated. In that state, you might judge certain outcomes more accurately because you're not intoxicated by hope. But ask yourself, what is hope doing? Hope is not a belief that everything will be fine. Hope is a biological lever. It changes posture. It changes risk tolerance. It changes persistence. It changes how pain is interpreted. If a mind becomes too realistic, it might conserve energy. It might withdraw. It might stop investing in uncertain futures. That can be accurate. It can also be a dead end. So maybe the healthy mind isn't the most realistic one. Maybe it's the mind that can tolerate reality by bending it slightly. Positive illusions can act like psychological shock absorbers. They soften the road so you don't feel every crack in your teeth. And the road has a lot of cracks. This is where radical honesty starts to look less like courage and more like luxury. Because being brutally honest often assumes you have enough support, stability, and safety to absorb the fallout. It assumes your nervous system has spare capacity. But most people are running life like a phone on 9% battery, screen cracked, notifications screaming. They are one emotionally expensive conversation away from collapsing into grey fog for a week. Honesty might be psychologically expensive because it forces you to pay attention to what you've been avoiding. And avoidance in small doses is not a sin. It's a pressure valve. The twist is this. The biggest lies aren't the sweet ones. The biggest lies are the ones that keep you functioning inside a life you secretly don't respect. People don't just tell themselves, "I'm amazing," when they're not. They tell themselves, "This is fine," when their days feel like a slow leak. They tell themselves, "I'm just tired," when they're hollow. They tell themselves, "I don't care," when they care so much it scares them. And radical honesty threatens those lies, which is why it feels holy. Not because it's always good, but because it feels like tearing off a mask that's fused to your skin. And here's the trapdoor moment. Sometimes the urge for radical honesty isn't about truth. It's about relief. It's about wanting to stop performing. It's about wanting to drop a heavy secret on the table so someone else has to hold it too. And that urge is deeply human. But if you confuse relief with wisdom, you'll turn honesty into a weapon that cuts everyone, including you. There's also a darker angle. Sometimes radical honesty is a socially acceptable way to be aggressive while pretending you're enlightened. People say, "I'm just being honest," the way a kid says, "I didn't mean to," after breaking something precious. Honesty becomes a costume for impulsivity. Truth becomes a permission slip. So, is radical honesty always good? No, because the mind is not a truth machine. It's a survival machine that occasionally tells the truth when it's convenient. And lying, especially self-deception, can have biological benefits. Not because lies are noble, but because they regulate. They reduce stress hormones in the short term. They prevent social rupture. They preserve belonging. They keep you acting when your rational mind would freeze. They protect your identity long enough for it to evolve. Sometimes a lie is a cast. You don't rip off the cast because you believe in authenticity. You wear it until the bone can bear weight. But here's where people panic. If lies can help, does that mean we should live in delusion? No, because some lies are medicine, and some lies are poison with a pretty label. So the real question isn't truth versus lies. It's which distortions keep you alive and which ones keep you asleep. Truth versus survival is not a simple battle. It's more like a thermostat. Too much realism and the room gets cold. You stop moving, you stop reaching. Too much illusion and the room overheats. You burn your life chasing fantasies, ignoring warnings, trusting the wrong people, betting your future on vibes. The healthiest mind might be the one that can adjust the dial, not the one that locks it on brutal truth and calls that maturity. So what do you do with this? You need exits that don't sound like motivational posters, not be positive, not just be honest, something more biological. First exit, practice calibrated honesty, not radical, calibrated. Before you say the raw truth, ask, is this truth for connection or for release? Is this truth time to build something or time to punish? Is it information? Or is it emotion wearing an information costume? Calibrated honesty means you tell the truth in a form the relationship can metabolize. Because dumping undigested truth on someone is like serving raw flour and calling it a meal. Second exit, separate accuracy from usefulness. You can be right and still sabotage yourself. Try this mental shift. Is this thought accurate? And then, is this thought helping me behave like the person I'm trying to become? Sometimes the accurate thought is, this will probably fail. And the useful thought is, I can survive failure and I'll learn something. The second thought might be slightly distorted, but it moves you, and movement matters. Third exit, build good illusions on purpose. That sounds sinister until you realize you already do it unconsciously. Do it consciously. Pick illusions that serve survival without severing reality. Examples. Believing your effort matters even when outcomes are uncertain. Believing you're allowed to take up space. Believing you can handle discomfort without collapsing. These are not fairy tales, they're scaffolding. Your nervous system needs scaffolding because raw reality unfiltered is too large, too loud, too indifferent. You don't need a lie that says everything is perfect. You need a lie that says, I can keep going until it becomes true through repetition. Here's the final micro scene. You're in your bathroom mirror, under that harsh light that makes everyone look like they've been awake too long. You stare at your own face like you're trying to read fine print. You think about all the things you haven't said, all the truths you've swallowed, all the lies you've told. And you feel this urge to purge everything, to become pure, to be real. But purity is not a human setting. Humans are compromise machines. We are stitched together from instincts, stories, hormones, and old fears in new outfits. So instead of asking for radical honesty, ask for intelligent honesty. Truth with a nervous system in mind. Truth that doesn't pretend you're a robot. Truth that understands you're an animal with rent and relationships and a fragile sleep schedule. And maybe the most honest thing you can admit is this. You don't want truth at all costs. You want truth at a cost you can afford. So here's the haunting question to leave on the table, the kind that doesn't let you scroll away clean. Which lie in your life is keeping you stable? And which lie is quietly keeping you small?